Welcome to Digitally Creative. I'm your host, Vincent Ferrari, and my streak has continued, and that would be my streak of getting guests who I can't believe I'm actually having a moment to chat with. We've had some legends, and we have another one, at least a legend to me, because he's one of the first YouTube channels I ever subscribed to. And because of the amazing conversation that I had with Bobby Duke a couple of weeks ago, where we mentioned him, he actually found us, which is amazing. But I have the one, the only, Dave from Toy Polloi. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me on. It was quite a surprise to hear my name mentioned by Bobby Duke, and you know, from that, yeah, we can now chat about whatever we're going to chat about.
It's I was thinking like as he was saying it, I'm like, yeah, boy, I mentioned from Bob, like when you're on Bobby Duke's radar, you're doing something right in the world. Like the man is just he's incredible. And everyone that hears that interview, they're like, man, it was so cool seeing like a different side of Bobby, like seeing him out of character a little bit, but still like you could tell it's still Bobby. And then he's like, "Do you ever watch this guy Toy Polloi?" And I'm like, "Of course I watch Toy Polloi, dude. I've been watching Toy Polloi longer than I've been watching you." So
I think that probably shows how long I've been doing YouTube. Then
yeah, how long have you been doing YouTube? How long has the channel been going? Because it feels like I've been watching you for a really long time.
it's been going now for 10 years. I started it back at the beginning of 2014, so we're just coming up to the 10-year anniversary beginning of next year. So it's been a long time, and I've really sort of feel I've fixed an awful lot of toys in that time. I think I'm well over 1,000 videos now, so hopefully that saved quite a few toys from being thrown away.
I think that's my favorite part of your channel because we were talking before we started recording, and I told Dave that one of the things that catches my attention most is when he starts repairing all the Kenner Star Wars stuff, particularly because I had a lot of that stuff, and by the time I got rid of all of it, most of it was completely broken. Like there was no hope for it. Even my father, who is Mister, we don't have the money for new stuff. We have to fix the old stuff. Would look at some of it and go, "Yeah, that's a goner. That's a goner." And now I'm watching it going, "Oh man, we could have fixed that. Like we really could have done some amazing." I mean, some of the tools weren't as readily available. Some of the things that you used to fix stuff wasn't as easily available. The stuff like plastic weld, I mean, it was out there, but it was like industrial chemicals and chrome pens and all the 3D printed stuff that we use. It wasn't quite as readily available, but it's kind of like if I still had it, I'd be working on it right now trying to fix it. But it is amazing watching you bring stuff that pretty much looks like it's trash back to life.
Yeah, I guess that's the fun of it for me. I like to see things restored, but the more broken it is to start with, the more fun it is for me as a project. There are some things I fix up and I can see instantly, oh, I just need to repair that and it's done. But when I get sent something or when I find something that is just completely broken and in pieces or covered in paint, for me that becomes the challenge then, because I'm sort of convinced I can fix it, but there are always some nagging things in the back of my mind thinking, well, can I do it? And it then becomes a real challenge. And I've done some properly destroyed toys over the years. I think the one that most people remember from my channel is I had an Action Man that had been completely painted red, and some child had essentially made him a sort of a battlefield victim. So he'd been painted red with enamel paint, and he just looked awful. And I actually saw it for sale. This Action Man. It was a guy I know who sort of buys and sells toys, and he had it. And I messaged him straight away saying, "I want to buy that off you." And he was like, "Why do you want that?" And I'm like, "Well, because for me, I can see that is a potential project. I may not be able to fix him, but for the few pounds that I spent on him, it was like under £10 or something. It was going to be a fun sort of few days work for me. And in the end, I did actually manage to fix him. But he was probably, I think most people would have just said, "That's rubbish. Let's put him in the bin." But for me, he was a challenge I knew I had to do.
I enjoy another series of toys that I had a lot of, and I'm watching you fix them are the Mask series of toys. And every time you open up any of the Mask toys, I like kind of hold my breath a little bit because I know how everything inside of them, they were engineered really well, but they weren't really engineered to last. And every single one of them, I feel like every time you take a screw out, a spring's just going to go shooting across your room or something's just going to fly apart the second you open them. I would never, ever open any of those toys. I wouldn't have the courage to open them and be convinced I could actually get them back together. Like, I'm amazed you did. I think it was it was you did the Thunderhawk, you did the Rhino, and both of them are like they're so intricate in how they go together. And some by some miracle, you managed to fiddle them back together, as you said. You always say they're fiddly, and I'm like, if he's calling this fiddly, this would be like impossible for me.
Yeah, those are toys I never had as a child, but I was aware of them. I'm from the era of sort of Transformers, and I think Mask is like the next stage on
Mhm.
from Transformers. So it's sort of automatically transforming toys. And
Yep.
a friend of mine sort of said, "Oh, they'd be really interesting if I worked on them." So I was sent a couple. I think the Switchblade was one of the first ones I got, and I knew it was going to be an awkward toy because you can hear the springs
That's a big mother.
rattling inside it as well, and you can tell that they're quite big springs. So everything, as soon as you undo those screws, everything in it inside it
Mhm.
just goes ping, and but that's that's just the start of a project to me, because then you have to work backwards. You've got to work back, well, why is that spring there, and why does that, what attaches it? I like those challenges, and yeah, okay, it can sometimes, it can be a bit sort of uh, stressful if you open a toy and it's immediately in pieces that you cannot work it out. But I think that's the advantage of filming as well, because at least if I'm filming, I can roll back the film and I can roughly work out where something has pinged from. But normally with a toy, I've been fixing toys long enough now. I think normally with a toy, I can sort of reverse engineer where the stuff should be based on my knowledge of how things work. So yeah, sometimes it's a bit, it can be a bit funny. I opened a transformer a few weeks back, and a spring
Let's
fired out, and I haven't still have no idea where the spring went. It's in my room somewhere, so I ended up having to buy a replacement spring because I just couldn't find this thing. It's gone. At some point, I'll move a toy or I'll move an action figure, and it will just be behind his foot or something. But for the moment, I don't know where it is.
So I've always wanted to ask this. So now that I have the opportunity, it's perfect. What is your background? Because you seem to have really good mechanical skills, and a lot of the stuff that you fix, repair, modify, a lot of sometimes you'll just do something to make it look more screen authentic as opposed to. I love what you did with the Buck Rogers, the Mego Buck Rogers stuff when you redid the Starfighter from Buck Rogers and you put the lights in and stuff. That was absolutely fantastic. And that wasn't really because it was broken. It was just because it was like, I want this to look a little cooler. It could be more than what it is. What is your background? Like, where did you pick up the skills that you've used to fix the toys that you fixed? Where did you learn all this stuff? Because you have a wide range of knowledge about a wide range of stuff. And sometimes it's impressive just to watch your videos to see how many different techniques you use on a single project. Where did you start with, and how did you develop the knowledge that got you to where you are?
Well, I guess that's going to go back right to my sort of childhood. As a child, I did lots of model kits and stuff. My dad was a big model maker, so he'd make boats and aeroplanes and things like that. Not just sort of airfix things; he'd actually make things from scratch. So me and my brother had some remote control boats that he built from scratch out of wood, and they were piloted by a couple of Smurfs. He just cut some legs off a Smurf and stuck them on. So right from the start, my dad was a big influence on showing me how to make stuff. But so was my mum. My mum used to make sew things and knit things, so I learned sewing skills from her. And we didn't have like that many new toys as a child. Some stuff I was able to buy, but most things came from secondhand sources, so from jumble sales and markets and stuff. So I'd often get toys that were broken, and then I'd make things for them. So if I had a Batman that was missing a cape, so I'd say to my mum, "Have you got some blue material or whatever?" And I would then cut out a rough cape, and I'd make a cape. It wouldn't be amazing because I was a child, and that was just how these things were, but it did the job. And then I guess as I got older, like my day job is I do computer graphics for video games, so I'm uh, constantly doing artwork and 3D modeling and stuff, and that gives you a good grasp of how things are constructed. And so obviously doing the artwork helps me make stickers and things for toys. So like the Buck Rogers one you were mentioning, a lot of that was making new stickers for it to make it look like the vehicle looked in the show. So that's sort of part of my day job. But the rest of it is just self-taught. I like model making, so I've got a few tools around. and I like just having a go at things. So you learn as you go. The first toys that I fixed, when I started doing toy repair, which is probably when I started collecting, so sort of in my 20s, the repairs probably, I know aren't that good. They did the job, but they aren't that good. The repairs I do now, as I've learnt skills over those sort of 30 years, are much better because I know now, I know more about materials and the tools that I need, and I know how to sort of construct things. So it's really self-taught, just from trial and error. But I think that's how a lot of people learn: trial and error. You have a go. If it doesn't work, you'll try something different. And you know, I
Mhm.
think one of the big things that I learned in since doing Toy Polloi is
I like
Lego. Lego is the go-to. If you break something, there's probably a bit of Lego that can be used to make to fix it.
I like how creative your fixes are. I mean, there are things that you've fixed. It made me realize that styrene sheet is another one of the things that, like, I should have some, just because you do so much with it. And it's such a versatile material, and it's something that I not only don't have, but I have no experience with. But I forgot what I was working on, but I literally was like, I should just get a piece of styrene sheet. Like, that would be a perfect fix for this. And I didn't even know it existed as a sheet in sheet form until I saw you working with it. But I see you, like, you'll take something apart and go, "Oh, this just needs a piece of styrene sheet, and I can cut this in, fashion it into a latch, or fix something that's not." And it's like, how did you, like? I mean, I know it's experience, and I know, but I just watch it, and it just doesn't make sense to me. And then I see you do it, and I'm like, now it makes sense. And why didn't it make sense to you before? It's just kind of your intuition tells you, like, oh yeah, this will work with styrene sheet. This will be good enough to put it together for a while.
I guess again, it's just experience. I like before I'd learned about styrene sheet and sort of plastic mold, which I only really got into in the last sort of 3 or 4 years. I would just use everyday items, and that was really the idea of Toy
Hmm.
Polloi. I would show people that you could fix stuff with everyday items. So um, you can sort of go, you can see something that is roughly the right shape for the part that you need and modify it a bit and shape it and make the new part from it. Styrene sheet is just a sort of a continuation of that. Rather than now looking for a sort of roughly similarly shaped part, I'll just make the whole thing from scratch using sort of different thicknesses of styrene sheet or rods and stuff. And actually, the more you use it and the more you mess around with it, you can actually build really quite complicated shapes. I've been doing some projects in the last few weeks. For some reason, I've really got back into transformers, and there's a load of transformers, G1 transformers, that are always missing key parts. They're finding the figure is easy, but finding those parts for it is
Hmm.
almost impossible. Like there's a character called Blur, which has a shield that is the front part of him in vehicle mode. It's always missing, and without it, he looks rubbish in vehicle mode. And you can buy that shield piece, but it's really expensive. So I just thought I'll make one. It's relatively simple shapes, and with a little bit of sort of fine tuning and sort of sanding and that, I can make it. So I spent an afternoon and made myself a shield for Blur. Yeah, and then I've got other transformers like Blast Off. He's always missing his wings, so I thought, well, I'll just make his wings. It's a simple enough shape.
Hmm.
Few bits of Lego in that one as well, just to sort of spice up the mix. It's not just styrene sheet. There's some Lego cut as well. So it just becomes a creative process, I suppose. You see an object and then you start to break it down into what those little pieces could be formed from. So it be a rod from a piece of Lego or a flat surface from something. It just, I think that's just how my mind works. I'll see something and I'll break it down into simpler forms.
Hmm.
And then once you've got it into sort of simplish forms, you can start the project. You can go, okay, well, I just start with that bit and then I'll add that bit on and build it up. Um, yeah, it's just how my mind works, I guess. But it's a useful way it works because it means I can solve many
So
problems.
sure. You have you have a very interesting way of explaining things that you're doing. Like, you're very thorough, but you don't over explain things. And I like when you take a toy apart, you actually don't just say, this is what I'm going to fix, and fix it. You explain the mechanism, like for stuff that's mechanical. Or I love when you did the GI Joe fix, and you showed how to fix the floppy legs, or the ones where you use the
Mm.
O-rings, a set of O-rings, and how to fish the O-rings through and hook everything and stuff like that. Like, people, you know, obviously how to explain things, but what made you think at what point? Because you said you've been fixing stuff for about 30 years. So what made you think, hey, I should be putting this stuff on YouTube? People might find this interesting. Like, what was your aha moment, and what was it like filming your first couple of videos of you doing something you were already doing anyway?
Well, it all started. You know, you interview other makers and things like that. There's a maker here in the UK called James Bruton. He makes robots and things like that, like really big projects. And he's an absolutely massive YouTuber now, and he's got millions of subscribers. And he does some amazing projects. But back 10 years ago, he was going out with a friend of my wife's, and they came round here. I can't remember, it was just for one evening or something like that. And I showed him my room of toys, which is what I'm sitting in now, and sort of showed him some of the projects that I was working on. And he said to me, "Why don't you film this? People would be interested in what you're doing." And I'd never really thought about doing that. I was just fixing toys for my own amusement and for my own collection. And so he sort of started the ball rolling and said, "What you should, you know, why don't you film it?" So I had a really rubbish little camera and a desk lamp, and I filmed my first video and started Toy Polloi. And actually, if I look back at those first videos that I did, the ideas are good, the content is good. I'm very nervous in the way I speak. The quality of the video is terrible, but it was enough for people to get the gist of what I was doing and the processes I was using. And you know,
Mm.
after 100 odd videos, you start to get more confident in the way you speak and the way you sort of get your ideas across. And editing your own voice becomes less of a sort of weird sensation. I'm sure you have the same thing. Listening to your own voice is very weird for the first few times you do it, and so it's just sort of
It's horrible.
you just yeah,
It's horrible.
it just progresses from there. That you just sort of work up to getting better and better. And I still don't do amazing quality videos. I've never wanted to do amazing quality videos. I could do them if I could, you know, I know how to do it. I know how to edit and all of that. But I never really wanted that to be the main part of the channel. The main part of the channel is about the toys and what I'm fixing, not fancy editing. So I don't really appear in my videos. It's just my hands there. And the way I talk and the way I explain stuff, that's just me. There's no, I'm not putting any on any sort of spin on what I do. This is how I do stuff, and I'm just literally talking as I'm filming. So there's no script. It is just me talking. So sometimes I do ramble on a bit. Sometimes I say the wrong things and I have to edit stuff out. But it's just me talking. It's not scripted. It's just the sort of the verbal rubbish that comes out of my head as I'm talking and as I'm fixing.
I think one of the biggest attractions for me to what you do is that the sweet spot of toys that you work on is are the toys that I had as a kid. And it's cool to watch you fix them because like I said, a lot of the stuff you did the Castle Grayskull and the Snake Mountain restores, and I didn't have Snake Mountain, but I did have Castle Grayskull, and I remembered how many things on my Castle Grayskull were broken and irreparable, and or it felt irreparable. Now I wish I still had it, of course. But I love how much you bring stuff back to life, and that's satisfying for people my age, but it's also satisfying just to see those toys again, to get that little glimpse of your childhood again. And I love that the is it because it's the toys you grew up with, or was it like, because I feel like that was almost like the last, like from like 19, I don't know, the mid 70s to the late 80s was probably the peak of toys for kids. Because really, at the end of the 80s, you started to really see where video games were kind of the thing that kids wanted to do. Like toys became. I was pointing out to my future brother-in-law that everything that we saw at the show this weekend was everything that we couldn't buy as kids. And now it's like all the stuff is like right in front of us. Like, oh yeah, I could spend $400 on a TIE fighter that I probably could have got for 60 as a kid, but didn't have 60. But yeah, I got 400 now. Let's do it. Is it your own nostalgia playing into it, or did you consciously pick the toys from this era? Or like, how did you arrive to what you started fixing?
Well, it's really my collection. So it's all the stuff that I have collected is what I fixed at the start. Nowadays, there's a few other things thrown in the mix, but my core collection is, you know, like you're saying, stuff from sort of mid to early 70s up to sort of late 80s. That is my childhood era. So that is what I collect. That's why it's Transformers, Star Wars, Action Man, all of that sort of stuff. That's where my passion is, because that's what I wanted in to have on display here. Um, and I'm a sort of a tight collector. I don't like spending money on stuff, so I would always buy the broken things, assuming that I could repair it, or at some point I'd find another
Mhm.
one that I could swap some bits out on. Nowadays, I do cover slightly more toys than I would have done at the start, because people are sending, people very kindly send stuff in that they want to see fixed. So that's why I got into doing mask. I never collected mask, but I knew of it, and then someone sent me one and I got into it.
Mhm.
And same with GI Joe. I'd never really collected GI Joe because it's an American thing. We had Action Force in the UK, so I had Action Force but no GI Joes. But then a lot of people would say, I want to send you this vehicle because I just want to see you repair it, like things like the killer whale I got sent, or the snow cat, and stuff like that. I'd never seen them, I'd never
Mhm.
had them before, but once I get them and I see the construction of them and see how they're put together, for me, that's how I really get involved in a toy. Just having a toy and put it on the shelf is a bit boring. If I have a toy and I take it apart and see how it works, I then get a new admiration for it, and then that sort of gets me into that toy line. And so all of a sudden I've gone from having no mask vehicles to having sort of 15 of them, because the one that I fixed really sort of grabbed my grabbed my sort of attention. It's like, oh, this is actually really cool. So now I go out and I buy them for myself because I find them quite exciting. But yeah, the core of my collection was the whole point behind Toy Polloi. It's just, what I have here is what I'm going to fix, and what I have here is the stuff I like. So it is the 70s and 80s.
Do you have stuff that's I know you have stuff in your collection that's from the era when you were younger, but do you have anything in your collection that you've repaired that was yours when you were a kid? Like, did you keep your stuff, or are you like most of us where you lost it at some point somehow and you've been trying to rebuild your collection of things that you once had?
I'm saying 95, maybe almost 99% of my collection is stuff I've bought since, because I reached that age of sort of 14, 15. I'd got into remote control cars and computers, and I sold off like pretty much everything. I kept,
Mhm.
there's a couple of figures I kept. There's a Dungeons and Dragons figure, which is my childhood one, which I kept. A, a few Star Wars figures. I think I kept a Jawa and Yoda, and a couple of like a couple of the really easy to get Ewoks. None of the rare stuff. It was just like the easy. And then a few of my Transformers are my childhood Transformers. I have Hubcap, which I remember buying. I still have the backing card for it, and so that is my childhood Transformers Hubcap. But yeah, most of it is stuff I've bought since, because, as you say, we've got money now, and I can buy all the things that I never had as a child, and all the things that my friends had, or that I'd seen in a catalogue. All of those things that I wanted are now mine, because I'm much, much older and have disposable income, as opposed to a child with no money.
I was thinking about that at the show this weekend because that's exactly what it is. It's like adults with disposable income. Like I saw some kids that were looking at stuff, and it was kind of cool seeing a younger generation looking at toys that were clearly, and so most of the stuff at this show was from, I would say, the early 70s till like, I think Mask was the most recent thing, not counting the people that had just video game stuff at their table. But it was so cool seeing, parents holding this stuff up and explaining to their kids what it is. And the kids just kind of looking at it like, that's cool. And I almost feel like maybe we've kind of gone so far away from toys for kids that maybe it's going to kind of swing back a little bit where it's like, oh, the kids are going to want something tangible now because video games are so commonplace, because that's what happened. I feel like that's what happened with video games. They were the new shiny thing. Nobody had them, but now everybody has them. So now it's like, I kind of want toys, like physical things in the real world. I think, I don't know, just seeing young kids touching the stuff that I loved when I was a kid and being excited about it, it just felt nice. It felt kind of like cozy.
No, certainly. I get lots of messages from people who watch the videos I make with their kids, because their kids have sort of, I guess, if your parent is collecting something, even if it's stuff from their childhood, the child is going to see it and sort of be interested in it, because I know from when I was a child, I was interested in the stuff my dad was doing. So when my dad was making model kits or making things, my dad had a remote control car. That's why I got into remote control cars, because he had it, and I could see how interesting it was, and the fact that you could build these things and paint them how you wanted. So I think kids now, if you're seeing your parent collecting old toys or whatever, that is going to certainly influence them, and hopefully that they are the new collectors of the future. Because let's face it, we're all getting older, and at some point the toys that we're interested in won't be interesting to anyone else, but there hopefully will be people further down the line who'll be interested in different toys, the toys that you can get now. There will be collectors of the future, of course.
Yeah, I think the most amazing thing to me was seeing stuff that I've seen before. Like, I saw they actually one of the guys that one had a booth, and he had some carded Buck Rogers Mego figures, and like I I looked at my I've looked at my future brother-in-law, and I just said, I am so glad I don't have disposable income for this kind of stuff right now, because he had Tweaky, Buck Rogers, and Wilma Deering carded at $150 a piece. And I was like, if I was much more irresponsible, I would have bought all three of those. Like, I don't even have a way to display them, but to have those three carded, that's like gold. Like, I want them. I don't even know what I would do with them. They're probably not worth $150. I don't know. But I know they're worth a lot on cards. And it was just like one of those moments where I'm so glad I'm much more responsible than I used to be, because I would have been going home with $450 worth of action figures and gotten killed.
That's the restraint of the toy collector. I know as I said, I'm sort of fairly tight toy collector, so I don't spend a huge amount of money on too much stuff. But every once in a while, there's something I'll see, or there's something that I know that I want in my collection. The Grail toy items. I think every collector has something that you got to have, and I
Mhm.
will spend a little bit over the odds. But I do try to be particularly sort of you know I just my wallet stays in my trousers. I don't want to get that out and spend too much money, because there's more important things that I
Mhm.
should be spending my cash on. But I was actually chatting to a friend of mine recently. I've been collecting a long time, so I have some things in my collection that I couldn't afford to buy now, but that I bought them back when no one was interested in toys. I started collecting sort of vintage toys mid to late 90s, something like that, and at that point, no one really was collecting the toy. People were collecting Star Warsy stuff and Transformers, but there were all the sort of peripheral toys no one cared about, and that's when I started buying, my collection. So I've got some things now that I know I couldn't afford to buy again, but I have them, and then they're never leaving.
I love even you've even done stuff like sometimes you'll even surprise me, because like I said, I've been watching your channel for a really long time. So I kind of know what your wheelhouse is. Every once in a while you surprise, like you brought out a couple of months ago, you did a repair of the Smurf with the gas
Yeah.
pump. And I was like, wow, like a Smurf, like a Smurf miniature repair. Well, restoration. It was really more about the pump than the Smurf itself, and I was like, it never ceases to amaze me. I mean, I've seen your videos, and the depth of your collection must be. You have a little bit of everything, and a lot more of some things, but you have a little bit of everything, like Smurfs. Wouldn't have expected that one.
Yeah, my collection, like people often say, what is the main part of your collection? And I suppose the main part of my collection is Star Wars, Transformers, and Action Man. And then there's a lot of other stuff sort of mixed in with that. It's really, my collection is really a sort of a follow on from my childhood collecting, because we didn't have much, sort of new toys. Most of my toys, as I said, came from jumble sales and things. So my mum would go out and she would just bring home an odd figure, and it'd be like, oh, okay. And I'd never have more of that figure as a child, but now I'm sort of wanting to get some of those little odd figures back, and that's
Hmm.
actually why I got Smurfs back in. I don't have many Smurfs, but um, my both my parents passed away in recent years, and we were clearing out their house, and I found a few Smurfs that my mum had kept, and I just thought, oh, actually, they're really sweet, and it's a sort of nice memory of my parents. And there were a couple of Smurfs that in my that I'd remembered having and really enjoying. So the national Smurf one. So yeah, it's the with the petrol pump. Uh, my parents used to take us camping around the sort of British countryside, and we would stop at national petrol stations. And if I had enough money, I could buy a Smurf from the petrol station because that's the place you would get them. So that's National Smurf is just a little memory of my childhood. Now my parents are no longer with me. It's quite a nice little memory to have that. And so once I bought that one, it was then, oh, actually, there's a couple of
Sure.
others that I wanted, like the Space Smurf, the Astro Smurf. I had that, so I picked one of those up. I've also
The one you fixed with the ball
that's right,
bite.
that's the one. And then I've also got I bought the ice hockey Smurf. I didn't know, I've got no interest in sports, but I remember having the ice hockey Smurf, and he was a pretty cool one. And I think I bought the Smurf with a wheelbarrow as well. Like, and that is the extent of my Smurf collection. Is those 4 or 5 Smurfs. I don't intend to buy more of
Mhm.
them. That's enough for me. It's a little pocket of memories. And that's
Sure.
what I've got. Like I've got some Fraggle Rock doozers. I think that was another weird one that people didn't expect me to suddenly start having doozers on my channel, but
That was a good
but
one.
I I loved Fraggle Rock growing up. I had the album that I listened to over and over again with all the songs on it. And I used to cut pages out of magazines. Anything with a Fraggle on it, I would cut the page out of the magazine. And I'd remembered having those wind-up doozers. And I thought, well, I want one again. And they're a toy that are really expensive now. No idea why, but they are really expensive. So it took me from me wanting to get one to me actually getting one took about 5 years. Just because I had a sort of an idea in my mind how much I wanted to spend, and it wasn't that much. So in the end, I've got one.
Yeah.
But then because I got one, I showed it on the channel. I had a few people get in touch with me saying, "Oh, I've got one. You can have. I don't collect them. I'll send you it." So I've now got all of my sort of childhood wind up doozers again are sitting on the shelf behind me, and that's all I want of Fraggle Rock. I don't want a big Fraggle Rock collection. It's just those little memories of growing up in a sort of collection. That's all I need.
Have you, in all the time that you've been doing this, have you taken something apart thinking, I don't think I'm going to actually be able to get this fixed, but I'm just going to take a stab at it because right now it's not really useful to me as parts or as something that's completely broken? Have you taken apart something where you started out thinking there is no way this is going to work, and then eventually realized, like, not only was it going to work, but you were getting it done, and it was almost like, was it where it was a surprise to you that it actually worked and you did get it fixed? Was there any toys like that in the time you've been doing
I
this?
think that's most of my fixing time is spent like that. I often get toys and I just open them up, and I have because I have no idea what's going to be inside it. You can open any toy up and sort of think, oh yeah, I'll fix this, and open it up, and it would be a complete mess. So yeah, I think most of the toys I fix at the moment. I did one that actually the video that came out this week, which was a Darth Vader TIE fighter that I'd been sent and was all sort of smashed to pieces. I had a rough, I fixed them before.
The Wabi Sabi TIE
Yeah,
Fighter.
I've fixed them like many times before, but you never know what you're going to get when you open it up, what sort of state it's going to be, how rusty it is, what's broken. So I just I start the filming with a rough idea of what I'm going to do. What I produce at the end may not be anything like what I sort of initially thought I would do because of how broken it is and what parts I need to find.
Mhm.
But that's the fun of fixing. Sometimes things don't work, and yeah, I think I did a video. Well, it must have been last year. Someone sent me a Thunderbirds 2 from Thunderbirds, Japanese Thunderbirds 2, and it was a real pain to fix because I took it apart and I could see what was broken, and I fixed it. And I put it back together, and it broke again. And then I took it apart and I fixed it, and it broke again. And like every time I fixed this thing, and I left it in the video, you can see the amount of stages I go through of trying to fix this thing, and it just keeps breaking. But that is what happens sometimes. And in the end, it's all back together. I had to modify it slightly to get it to stay together, but it is back together. Not a perfect fix. And the start of the video I thought it would be easy. At the end of the video, I was quite relieved just to get it back together. But it's done and it's on the shelf and it looks good.
I think that's I like how sometimes when you finish something, I like that you give yourself credit for that, because I think that's kind of important, where you'll say something like, it's not perfect, or, it's not, you wouldn't want to play with it, but for display purposes, it's great. And I think that's a good way to look at it because for a lot of collectibles, they don't really need to be play with able again. You'd like them to, ideally, in an ideal world, everything would be 100% fixed, 100% functional, working again. But in the real world, sometimes it's just not possible. But if you can make it look good on the shelf, that's actually pretty good because that's what most collections will do. They will be on the shelf looking great amongst the other parts of the collection. And I think it's kind of cool that you're willing to not just part with something because it doesn't function 100%. Like, yeah, but it looks good on the shelf. Like, it's going to be fine.
I think that's just how I collect as well. There are a lot of people who are obsessed with mint items. They've got to be the most perfect they possibly can be, and I don't think there is. Certainly in toy collecting, there is no such thing as a mint item. Everything will have a defect or a flaw in it because these things are mass produced to be played with and handled. And even when they come out of the factories, often they are not perfect.
Mhm.
They'll have marks in them or things won't be perfect. So my collection is like that. Nothing is perfect, but as long as it looks nice and I can get something out of it, it will go in my collection. It doesn't have to be perfect. I've got some toys here that are still missing pieces. I've got figures with arms missing and legs missing, but I've never found the missing leg. So until I do, I can still enjoy it. I can still enjoy it as a thing. It doesn't have to be perfect. Um, I know some. I think some people miss that. Maybe some people want. It's got to be as perfect as it can be, and if it isn't, then they're not happy. They can't sort of settle with it. For me, a bit of wear and tear. These are toys. They're played with. So I'm not that. I've never been that fussed about it being perfect or complete. Even a lot of my collection, I think my Transformers collection, I don't think I've got a single complete figure in my Transformers collection. They're all missing accessories or parts, and I've never. And often I'll pick a figure up thinking, "Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember it was missing that," and then that's a new project for me, which is like the Blur. I would say making a new panel for the Blur. I've sort of picked it up and had forgotten I didn't have that part on it. So it's like, oh, fine, I'll just make it now. It's a project. So yeah, I don't. I think it's an attitude I'd like other people to sort of learn that you don't have to. Nothing has to be perfect. Nothing in the world is perfect. So your collection doesn't need to be perfect. Just enjoy it as it is.
So this brings up an interesting discussion. Kathy and I were having in the car on the way home last night. We were talking because I got some stuff at RetroCon that was collectible to me. Like there's two pieces in particular that I got, and I checked, I did some looking around to see what they're worth, and they are worth more than I paid for them, which I did really well on them. And I knew instinct said that they were worth picking up because they are definitely not something you see in stores. They're definitely older. It was two Pokemon items, both of them exclusive to one exclusive to certain stores, the other was an import. So it was very exciting to me to have an opportunity to get them and snag them at the price I did. But here's the thing now, and this is the thing I'm struggling with. And my fiance comes out on one side, and I come out on the other. I am very much of the mindset that I don't want to take them out of the box. And one of them is a two action figure set that I really want to keep on the cards. And she is very much a kind of like she has a collection of stuff that she likes too, and she's very much of the mindset that if they're meant to be enjoyed, they should be out of the box and on display loose and out of the box. And I kind of think I know where you fall on that discussion. I know where I've never really had a lot of things that are worth anything, even if they were on the card. So now that every once in a while I pick something up that in the box or on the card is actually worth something, I get a little squirrely about taking it out of the packaging. Like I don't want to. I want it to have that value. But there's also the mindset of it doesn't have a value if you're not able to enjoy it and you're just putting it in your house to turn your house into a museum. So I'm kind of wondering where you kind of fall on that spectrum.
Well, most of my collection is loose and played with. I do have some carded items, but like few and far between. For me, I generally just don't bother buying boxed items because I can't. I get the enjoyment out of actually sort of
Mhm.
manhandling these things and playing with them. And if it's on its card, what you can't redo it. You can't get a full sense of the toy. I still do buy some boxed items, but generally it will be I've already got a loose one, and I would just, just for my collection, I'd like a boxed one to go with it, but I will always have a loose one that I can play with. If I buy something boxed and I don't have another one,
Mm,
I'll generally open it up so that I can actually, get at the toy and do what I want with it. Um, so yeah, but I'm not, I'm probably not your average collector. A lot of collectors collect for the value of things and for they want complete collections. Everything's got to be perfect and everything's got to be original. That's not the sort of way I collect. So I'm probably not
sure.
your average collector. Monetary value as well. People say, oh, they're always talking about monetary value. Yeah, I'm not that good with monetary value on stuff. If I enjoy it, I'll buy it, but I'm still going to buy it for cheap. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on something, even if I really wanted it. I wouldn't spend.
Right, totally.
So yeah, it's a tough one. But if it's something you've always wanted and you'll enjoy it in the box, keep it in the box. But for me, I think I would.
Mhm.
If I've only got one of it and I want to enjoy it, I will open it.
It's funny you mentioned buying multiples because I have a lot of, and this is one that I keep on my desk by my screen. Obviously, I have a little Pikachu. This is the Tomy, the 1998 Pikachu's. So this is the original figures, but I have him. He's out and about, obviously, and then on my display case, such as it is, I actually have a carded one that I wanted. Like, it's like, no, if I'm going to put it on display, I want a carded one on display. So I actually just bought two of them because I was like, it's worth it. That's like $2. I can keep that on my desk and enjoy it. And then I also have a nice one that looks nice on the card for display. So it's interesting. I think that's more in line with what I would actually do than I like I said, I've just never had anything that had value on a card. So now that I have a few things like that, it's like, oh, I really don't want to like it's I love the stuff. Like I would love to have it out of the box and standing around and on display. But man, it's really nice to for once in my life I have a couple of things that another collector might actually
Yeah,
want,
yeah.
you
I
know?
think I've got one. I can only off the top of my head, I can only think of one thing that I haven't ever taken off the card that I don't have a loose one of, just because I've never seen a loose one. So I think if I've never seen a loose one and I've got a carded version of it, I'm not going to open the card just because the chances of me finding another is very rare. Like Star Wars figures, I've got every Star Wars figure, so I've got carded Star Wars figures as well. There's no point in me opening those because Star Wars figures are easy to get. But yeah, this is I collect Fisher Price Adventure People. They're generally very easy to find, or they always used to be. You could pick them up for next to nothing. So I've got 40 or 50 different adventure people, and then I've also got quite a collection of carded Fisher Price Adventure People. But there's a character in that called, I think it's called the Brainoid, um, which came on a 3-pack with a couple of other figures. And I've got the other two figures loose, but I don't have a loose Brainoid because I've never seen one. I've never seen one in the UK ever. So my carded Brainoid is going to stay carded just because if he's rare loose, he's very rare carded. So yeah, he's a weird figure. I think that's probably the only thing I've not opened.
90 bucks, 90 bucks loose in the
Yeah,
United States, and they're averaging about 90 bucks. I found them on eBay in the
yeah.
US.
He's he,
That's out of control.
for a Fisher
$90.
Price figure. Yeah, because Fisher Price figures, like the Adventure People figures, I think I've never paid more than £2 for an Adventure People figure. There's only about 70 of them like in the entire line. And I think I'm just looking at my shelf now. I've probably just a quick count. I've probably got 45, maybe 50 of them. So I'm missing about 20 at the end of the line, which are the sort of the rarer ones that probably are US only or something like that. But yeah, for a Fisher Price Adventure People figure, $90 for that. That's a lot of money because they're not really worth any money at all. And until very recently, not many people collected them.
You know, it's funny. I'm actually looking as you're talking about because I'm like, I knew I'd heard of Adventure People, but I didn't remember. And I'm looking at this one seller, I'm looking at it now, has a lot of 25 of them for $75. And I'm looking at the figures, and I had friends, I had some of these. I didn't know what they were called. And now I'm looking at them like I recognize this one guy who's got a motorcycle helmet and green glasses and a checkered
Yeah,
flag on his
yeah.
chest. I'm like, I had that figure. I didn't know what it was. It was just a figure that I had as a kid. And I'm thinking, like, wow, how many figures did I have as a kid and not even know what they actually were? Like, wow, Fisher Price Adventure People. That's a whole Man, that's like Playmobil too. Like Playmobil's another one that everybody all of a sudden out of nowhere. It was when I was a kid in the 80s, I'm sure you went through the same thing. Playmobil was the hottest thing in the world. Then it just fell off the face of the earth. You never heard about it again. Now all of a sudden everybody's collecting Playmobil. Everyone's collecting it. Like you see it all over the place. And it's like, wait, when did this happen? Why did this happen? Like,
Yeah, it's
but
strange how these sort of toy lines come back into fashion. I I started collecting Fisher Price Adventure People maybe oh, 12 or more years ago, like before I started Toy Polloi. I hadn't thought about them for years, and then all of a sudden I there was one figure I remembered having, which was a frogman, a Fisher Price Adventure People frogman. He's a blue guy in a sort of a wetsuit with a squid emblem on his back. And I've remembered that my nan gave me this figure one, I think it was a Christmas, and at that point, I thought, oh well, I'll get that figure again. Now I've remembered it. You know, it can go in my collection as just a little memory figure. So I went on eBay and I bought a carded version of him. I think he was like £2 or £3 for a carded figure. At this time Star Wars was expensive and all of that stuff, but these Fisher Price figures were nothing. So I bought him, and then once I got him, I started just picking up odd ones. Every time I was at a toy fair or something, I would pick up an odd Fisher Price figure, and my collection sort of grew. And then I bought more job lots of carded figures because they were really cheap. And that's when I got the brainoid, because I bought a job lot of carded figures. It cost me almost nothing. Um, and then all of now, everybody wants them. So all of a sudden, everybody wants them, and prices are going up and up and up. They're still affordable. Carded, no, carded is not affordable, but the loose figures are still affordable. But now, all of a sudden, and I don't think I can be blamed for that. I've only shown them a few times on my channel, but I think maybe it's just an age thing. Suddenly, people have started remembering them and going back to it. But yeah, they're an interesting toy line. But I collect a thing called uh, penny racers, which were these tiny little cars that you put a coin in the back of them and they did wheelies.
I loved
Um,
those.
and very few people collect them, and very few people bother to hunt them down. I've been collecting them for years. I've only got one carded one. All of mine are loose because I like playing with them. They're wind up cars. You put a coin in, they whiz around. So all of my collection is
Hmm.
loose penny racers. They're very hard to find just because no one particularly cares about them or pays attention. So I don't find them often. They don't cost much when you do find them. They're a couple of pounds, but they're great toys. It's and I love collecting them. I'm sure most people wouldn't care less about them, but I find them fascinating, and I only collect them loose so that I can play with them. You know.
I I had a bunch of them. I had a bunch of them as a kid. And when you did the video on them, and you repaired the one with the pack on the roof, and I was looking. It inspired me to go on eBay and see if I could find the couple that I had as a kid. And you can't. There are plenty of listings for penny racers on eBay, but it's I wanted the
Mm,
ones I had. Like I didn't want just any of them. I don't want a whole collection of them like yours. I just wanted the four
yeah,
or five of them that I had, and I didn't find any of them. But like watching you do that video, I felt so nostalgic for them. I'm like, these were so much fun. Like you drop the penny and they do
yeah,
a wheelie. They were so fast, and they were really tiny, so they were really light. There was so many great toys like that. It just the burning key cars
yeah,
were another one that I really, really loved as a kid. They were one of my favorite toys. Um, and every once in a while you'll pull, like I said before, you'll pull something that's out of what I expect from you. Like I expect action figures. I'm looking forward to you doing more Transformers because God, they were wonderful toys, but some of them were so poorly made. Um, but when you pull something small like that I felt like, and this happened a lot at the show too, where I felt like I was the only kid that owned a certain kind of toy. And then like you come out and go, so yeah, I collect penny racers, and you show your whole collection. I'm like, I didn't even know anyone else had these, let alone collected them.
I think, but that's the joy of collecting. That you'll see something, at a toy fair or wherever, or in someone else's collection, and it will start you down that rabbit hole of collecting. Penny racers are fantastic. There was another line. Everyone used to have Rough Riders, which were battery powered cars, a bit bigger, with a gear stick on the top of them, and you could move the gear stick, and it would sort of go forwards or backwards. But there was a spin off of Rough Riders called
That's what they were
yeah, the
called.
big ones, Rough Riders. But they had a smaller counterpart
Yes.
called stunt riders, no,
Stompers.
Stompers are different. Stompers were made by Schaefer, uh,
Okay.
but stunt riders are
Okay.
the small versions of Rough Riders, and they're about the same size as penny racers, but they have little cones on their wheels so that they can do sort of side wheelies. Stunt riders are made by a company called LJN. Nobody collects them, and again, apart from me, it seems. So I keep hunting down these stunt riders. They're almost impossible to find. I've got four of them, I think now, maybe five. Um, but they're like penny racers, but they had a metal weight on the back of them, which was like a spare tire made out of lead. So rather than putting a penny on the back, you put this spare tire on, and they did wheelies and they did side wheelies, and they have a little bar underneath that you can sort of move around, and it makes them spin around in different circles. They're an amazing toy. No one collects them, as far as I'm aware.
I'm literally looking right now. I love when I had them and I didn't know what they were called, and I remembered I was looking for I had the LJN made them in the United States, and there was a bronze Corvette toy that I had, and as soon as I searched for it, I found the bronze Corvette. It's literally I'm looking at it right now. I've been
Yeah,
looking for that toy. I'm not even joking. I've been looking for that toy for like 20 years. I wanted
yeah.
that toy because I played with that thing until it fell apart. That is so cool. I finally know what they're called. I was
Well, I
looking at
have
Stompers and going, why aren't they here? Why isn't it here? This isn't what I was looking for, but I was looking for the
this.
wrong toy.
This is a stunt rider, but this is
Oh.
a little Pontiac. So I think this is themed to Smokey and the Bandit. So it's tiny, and you can see there's the metal wheel on
Mhm.
the back of it. So it's got a tiny little metal wheel, which is a weight. You can remove this, so you can just have the car on its own. The weight makes it do little wheelies. But yeah, they're fantastic little toys. Similar era to Penny Racers. So I'm going to say early 80s, maybe sort of 82, 83. But no one particularly
Mhm.
collects them, it appears, apart from me. But you don't find them very often. They don't turn up at flea markets or toy fairs. And if they do, they've almost never got the wheel. That piece is always missing. But they're fantastic little things. And, you know,
Sure.
I love them because they're so odd, but they're not worth any money. People think I think people think
Mhm.
all toys are worth huge amounts of money. They're not worth anything. The childhood memories are what are worth the money. The
They're
toy
worth
itself.
it here.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
they're this is where they're worth it. Like, so I actually had a moment like that this weekend. So I had one of my favorite things that I collected as a kid were muscle figures. I loved them. I loved them deeply. They were some of my favorite toys, and I'm not even joking. I had hundreds of them. And but the first set I ever got was in a clear garbage can, and I don't know which one, but one of my friends stole them from me. And there was one figure in that can that I was never able to find again. Like, I would buy complete sets, I would buy the garbage cans hoping I would find him in there. And when I went to the show this weekend, I found him, and he was $5, and I was never happier to spend $5 in my life. Like, this meant everything to me to be able to find him. And I told the guy that was selling him, I was like, I held him up and I showed him to my brother-in-law, and I'm like, you have no idea the significance of this right now. And he goes, it's a muscle. I'm like, no, no, no. So I told him the story. And the guy behind the counter he goes, you clearly have childhood trauma. You can fix that trauma for $5. And I giggled. I'm like, you know what? That was the funniest thing I've heard today. And I took the $5 out and I just paid him. I'm like, that was worth $5. Thank you. I said, apparently, and look, the trauma's gone. I guess retail therapy does work. But then down the aisle, I bumped into a guy who had an actual collection of the American ones and the Kinnikuman ones. And we were talking about it, and it was so nice to have kinship with another person who collected them and loved them as much as I did, because I've literally never met anyone that even knows what they are. I feel like I'm on an island when it comes to these, and I met two people, one who collected them and was selling pretty much his whole collection, and another guy who was bringing some of the more valuable ones to try to sell them at the show. And I had such a great conversation with this guy. I even told him, I was like, I have on my eBay wish list one day for when I have disposable income for it, I have the full Japanese Kaneko Man set. It's like $325 for the full set of all of them. And one day I'm going to buy that set. Like, I am going to buy that set because I want that. And that's going to be another one of those. Am I going to keep it in the box or not? Probably not. I want them on display. I want a whole array of them on my wall. But it was so nice to bump into a guy who was excited about them as I was, and it's just it's amazing, like, when you're a kid, toys bring you together, but when you're an adult, you have not only the toy bringing you together, but the stories and the nostalgia that comes along with them that kind of you bond over. It's like, yeah, they meant a lot to me too. And here's my collection. Show me your collection. What did you collect? I like that one too. And man, I love this space. This is the happiest I've been in a space that isn't like a technically a creative space, probably in my life, where I'm kind of reassembling some of the toys that had the most meaning to me, and it's just a wonderful group of people that are involved in it, and those memories are just having them with other people that share them. It's wonderful. It's just so wholesome.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's what toys do to me. I like the memories that they bring to me, but I like the memories that I can put into them. So, it's not just the ones that I buy because I want them again, the childhood ones, but when I buy a toy and fix it up, I've then got a new little connection to that toy. So when I look at it, I can remember how I went about fixing it and how I went about repairing it. And that gives me that new little story as well. So if someone comes round and looks at my collection and they say, "Oh, you've got one of those," I can go, "Yeah, but when I got it, it was broken and I'd had to do all of this to it. And it's got a story of its own, not just that I've bought it and put it on my shelf. It's got this new story that I've bought it and repaired it or I've done something to it." So it's that continuation of those sort of stories of childhood. I love like when people come around here. I just sort of stand back and I like watching them point at things, going, "I had that. I had that. I always wanted that. I had that. Oh no, I've never, oh, I've never seen that." I love that sort of reaction that you get. But I do it when I go and visit other friends with collections, and I go in. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
stuff that we collect that's very common. Things, crossovers in collections like He-Man and all of that stuff. But there'll be something
Sure.
on a shelf. It'll be like, "Oh, I've never seen that. What is that? What is that toy? Why?" And that's what's great about sort of sharing your collection and being able to look at other people's collections is the "Oh, I never knew about that sort of moment and the learning part of it. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. It's honestly it's becoming one of my favorite things to the point where I might be a little bit addicted. I might be a little bit addicted. Not so much to the collecting part, but to the connections that form while you're collecting, and being able to talk to the people that you're buying their thing from, and kind of selling yourself as someone worthy of taking something from their collection that you're going to put into your own. And it
Mm.
was it was such a good experience for me, and I can't I think I am addicted. I can't wait to have that experience again. I
It's
know you
great.
go to the shows too. It's gotta be the same for you. I mean, you do it even more.
Yeah, no, exactly. I go to quite a lot of shows, and sometimes I'll go and I won't come back with anything. But that's not a disappointing day because I like looking at other toys and stuff. Even if I don't buy it, I like seeing what's there and seeing, just getting ideas for things. But also nowadays, quite a lot of people will stop and come up and chat to me about stuff. And always ask them what have they bought, and so I always have a rummage in other people's bags to see what they've bought on the day. So even if I don't come away with anything, you get that interaction with other people and you get to see other collection, other stuff that's available. So it's never disappointing to come home empty handed from a toy fair because you still had that sort of buzz of seeing stuff. Or you may regret not buying something, but then there's always the next one. You can buy it at the next one, or you'll buy something different. So yeah, I totally agree. It's the fun of sharing your collection and the fun of just, you know I like to see new things, new old things. For me, I don't buy many new toys, so it's the old stuff that always
Mhm.
catches my eye. And I still buy odd things that I would never think to have in my collection. You can see on my shelf behind me, I have these weird handcuffs. And that was, I went to a toy fair, and I've got a friend who runs a toy stall. These are from Police Academy. I can't remember the last time I watched Police
Mhm.
Academy, and I've never seen the cartoon. But I saw them on his stand and thought they're really odd. I should buy them, but I didn't at the time. But then, after the toy fair, I messaged him just saying I really should have bought those because they're just weird. Could you put them by for me? I've no idea why I like them. but they're weird, and they are in my collection now. But I'd never
They're
heard of
weird and
them.
they're funny.
Yeah, I saw them at a toy fair, but they came in a box. They are no longer in a box, so because they're better on display like that. So there's one thing I did open straight away.
I have been So when I told you I wanted to have you on the podcast, one of the things I told you is that I do every weekend. This is going to be particularly fun for you. With you on for sure. I do something called Thing of the Week, and I have been dying to see what your Thing of the Week was going to be because I can only imagine what you brought to the table. Um,
Well, the thing is, I've got lots of. I'm always working on lots of things. It's one of those.
mhm,
It's one of those things. I'm just sort of looking around what I can pick up for you because I was going to say Transformers because that actually been. I've not been fixing Transformers for a long time, but over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've suddenly got massively back into Transformers. So I've been doing a lot of fixing of those. So those are things I enjoy doing. But I think the best thing I've done recently, which I'll show you again, which is back to Star Wars, is this a Star Wars Land Speeder. It's such a common toy,
mhm.
but I just thoroughly enjoyed repairing this one. It's there's nothing amazing about it as a toy. It's a fairly common toy, but I spent a good few hours repairing this, and it calmed my mind. Those sorts of things I can switch off and forget about the troubles of the day. So this is my thing for you. It's not an exciting toy. It doesn't do anything that exciting, but the pleasure it brings me is what is why I like it. But I could literally do that about any toy in this room. I could pick something up, and the pleasure it would have brought me you know is my thing of the moment. But really, this week is Transformers. I'm doing an awful lot of Transformers repairs and thoroughly enjoying every single one of them. From the simple things to repairing Metroplex's waist to making a new gun barrel for a
No way.
Warpath figure.
Wait, wait,
Yes,
wait, 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 wait. There's no way you're repairing Metroplex's waist. There's no
I,
way.
I
I
can
have
I
a
can
story.
I can reach over and bring in the Metroplex that I repaired his waist on earlier this week. So this I did a few days ago.
You fixed
He
it.
was snapped in half, and he now works perfectly. You can click him, and I don't think you'll break him again. So this it's been a
It
project I've wanted to do for ages. And someone sent me their sort of remains of their childhood collection, and this was in it. And I knew as soon as I got it, it was going to be one of my first projects.
Dave, I have to tell you something. I have to tell you a story. I have to tell you a story. My grandfather passed away in 1986, and my parents couldn't afford to take my sister and I with them to West Virginia because they had to fly it. Obviously, funeral. They couldn't drive there. It's 700 miles from us, so they had to go there. And my father said, "I promise you, if you and your sister are good, we are going to get you We'll get you a nice toy when we come home." And it was like, okay, cool. So we went to my grandparents' house. We spent 5 days there. We were on our absolute best behavior. And when we came back, my father and mother, they took us to Toys R Us, and they let us pretty much have a run of the store. We'd get one toy, but it didn't matter how big it was. They didn't care, whatever we wanted. And I was eyeballing Metroplex on the shelf, and that was all I wanted. And my father goes, "Is that what you want?" I was like, "That's what I want." He goes, "Okay." And he took it, put it in the cart. Didn't even ask. Like, it was like perfect. It was a kid's dream. I got it home. I played with it. I loved Metroplex. I played with all the components of it. It was my favorite. He was my favorite Transformer. I played with him to death. I moved a couple of years, like a year later, I moved, and my upstairs neighbor kid took it. He grabbed the legs, he grabbed the top, and he twisted it too hard, and he was holding two pieces of Metroplex. And it just broke my heart. And my father, who could pretty much fix anything, looked at it and said, "There's just nothing." Like, because it's really just a plastic bump essentially that goes into a hole on the upper body. Like, I can't wait to see how you fix it. You don't have to spoil it. I'm very excited about this. But my father looked at it and goes, "I don't know that we could actually fix this." So I actually had to throw them away. And when we were at the toy show, when we were at RetroCon this weekend, there was one standing on the on. They wanted, it wasn't complete. He didn't have like the rolling car. He didn't have all the components. He didn't even have the knees, the things that hold the guns on his knees, like those clip-on things. Like he didn't have the whole setup, and he was charging $125 for it. And I'm like, just buying the extra parts is going to make this a $200 investment. I don't have that to make into this toy right now. And my brother-in-law goes, "Why are you so obsessed with this?" So I told him the story of the waist. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's a bad one." I was like, "Yeah, that toy meant a lot to me." So now, of all the toys you could have possibly said you were fixing, you're fixing Metroplex, and I am now like, "Oh my god, please, I have to see that video now." So that's
It's but
awesome. I am very excited.
oh, I'm sorry that your childhood one sort of saw the fate of many, but he's one that you do see in pieces all the time. In fact, I see him more often than not
All the
snapped at the
time, two
waist.
pieces.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to cover that for
Mirage
a long time
too.
because yeah, Mirage too. Mirage you can fix with Lego. I've covered him. He's a
Mhm.
standard fix. But yeah, Metroplex is one I've been wanting to do that for a long time. And yeah, a sort of friend of the channel who sent me a very odd toy a while back. In fact, it was the start of a very fun project. I'll start with that story. He saw my Smurf, one of my Smurf videos, and he dug up an Astro Smurf in a field down, I think, near Bognor Regis or something. I think he's an archaeologist or something like that. And he, in this field, dug up this Astro Smurf that had been sort of chewed up and obviously run over by multiple bits of farm machinery and that. But he sent that to me to fix up. And I have to say, I haven't fixed it up because it looks so amazing and it's got such an amazing story. All I did for it was
It's a
I made
relic.
it. Exactly, it's been buried for 40 years or something. I made it a helmet, but I made it a helmet with full of cracks and stuff, so it looks like the helmet has been sort of aged as well. Anyway, from that, he said that he had like the remains of his childhood collection of toys that he'd like to send in as a sort of donation because he likes watching the videos. And he that arrived last week, and in that was a broken in half Metroplex. So this is his Metroplex because as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to fix it up and get it working. So um, it is possible to fix. In fact, it's an incredibly easy fix, just a few bits of styrene sheet, and you can actually get him working. And I think he is now stronger than he's ever been. So uh, I don't want to push it, but I don't think you will be able to break this. He is now very firmly held together, so he can be fixed. And your childhood trauma, hopefully, this will take some of that away.
I'm now much more comfortable with the idea of maybe finding a broken one, because there's a lot of broken ones out there, and I'm much more comfortable. Like after I see your video, if it's not too crazy, I might try to, put a watch out on eBay just to see if a broken one comes up at a good price and just fix it, because man, that is a toy that broke my heart so bad. And I don't have a lot of toys that I lost as a kid that really make me sad. That was one of them, and that really, really broke my heart, because that was the biggest, most expensive toy I owned, and my stupid landlord's kid broke it, and I never got a replacement because it was, you don't go to the store and get replacements. You just go, oh, they're kids. What are you going to do? I'm like, but
Yeah,
that was my favorite toy.
it's always a shame when as a kid and you break a toy. I think all the stuff I've learned now, it wouldn't worry me so much, and I because I break toys, I still accidentally break things and I fix them here. But as a child, if you break it, it is the end of the world. There's nothing you can do, and you can ask your parents to fix it, but chances are they won't know what to do, or they just glue it back together badly or something. And it's never quite the same again. So I completely understand that
Yeah.
sort of those sort of gutting memories, isn't it? It's like, oh no, it's been ruined. But I things can be fixed, so that don't worry. That's coming along in a few weeks' time. You'll see how to do it, and it will be a future project for you if you ever find one.
I'm very excited about it. Before we started talking, I had the opportunity to tell Dave that I picked up something at RetroCon that I actually was inspired by him to buy. Not directly, but because of all the stuff I've learned watching his channel over the years, I actually picked something up that is not in mint condition, which I was very proud of myself. I didn't have to be on a card, but because Kathy's favorite character, one of her favorite characters in Disney, is the genie from Aladdin, I got this really nice, very big genie figure. He was in a bin, and basically the guy just wanted five. He wanted, was it 5 or 10? I don't remember what I paid for him. Either way, it was a bargain. He's in really good condition. There's no deep gouges on him. He's just a little dirty. He needs some paint touch up, and the sculpt on the face is what sold me. I mean, it's perfect. Like, it looks incredible. And for the most part, the paint, even on the face, is in really good shape. There's a couple of spots that need a little touch up, but after watching Dave's channel for so many years, I am actually going to tackle this as a restore project, and of course I'm going to film it because this one needs to be filmed. Like, I need to get this, and I might even steal some of Dave's music and totally be inspired by Dave. But it's it's a really fantastic piece, and I'm very excited about restoring it. But that's my thing of the week, because that's going to be a project, and I figured what more to do as a thing of the week than one that's actually inspired by the guest I'm actually talking to. So thank you for inspiring me to actually pick that up at the show, and inspiring me to bring it back to its beautiful factory glory.
Well, that's cool. It looks like a fun project to me, and I think as we were discussing off camera, fairly simple to do. A little bit of cleaning and that, a little bit of painting, you'll have something that looks really nice very quickly, and then
Hmm.
you'll have your own memories attached to it, your own story about how you put it back together. That's the fun of this stuff. It's
Hmm.
the memories that you assign to these items and these toys as you go about fixing them.
Yeah, I had that. I did a Tonka truck restoration, and for those of you that follow my YouTube channel, if you go back to, I think it was about 3 years ago when I finished it, 4 years ago now, actually, it was February of 2019 when I finished it. You can go back and see me do my first toy restoration, which was a Tonka truck, and it was, that truck is very important to me now. Like, I will not part with that truck. If I lose everything in the world and this house is burning down, there were two things I'll take with me. One is the first stuffed animal I ever had as a child, which I still have, and the other is that Tonka truck. Like, it has to go. Like, I have to save those two things because that truck has that much meaning for me, because it kind of was a pivot for me. Instead of just watching people do cool stuff and restore old toys, I restored an old toy. And again, with techniques learned by watching people like you and like Marty's Matchbox Makeovers and channels like that, like all these channels I've been watching over the years, I've started to absorb the information, and it's like, oh, I know how to fix that. Like, that's cool, I know how to fix that. So
Yeah,
I know you probably get this a lot. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, that's the whole point of the channel, really, is to teach people ways of fixing stuff. So you may not watch, my videos may not cover a toy that you're particularly interested in, but hopefully the techniques that you'll see in the videos
Yes.
will give you ideas on how to fix something. That's the whole point of it. I try to do a wide range of toys, toy lines, so there's a bit of everything, but generally the sort of tricks and the ideas that I show in each video are universal. You can cut and paste them onto other toy lines. They will just work the same. So, but yeah, you've got to keep those little memory ones, and I'm glad you kept that one on shelf. I have here behind me on this shelf is things that I have fixed that I won't ever give away. I give a lot away. If people come around and they see something and I've got multiples of it, I generally say just take one of them. But the ones here are things that I've fixed that I have the most connection to, that I've fixed, and also things that have gone wrong, because if it's gone wrong, it's then a memory of don't do that again. So I've got a few here of mistakes that are there to remind me, don't do that because this is what happens.
You know what? Those, I think those, we don't learn. If you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. Sometimes you could know what'll happen, but when you see it happen, you go, "Oh, now I know how to prevent that." Like, I know what I did that made that happen. I can actually pivot and not do that again. I think one of the things when I did that Tonka truck, I used the wrong kind of rivets, so the front bulges out a little bit. And I look at that, and I could just drill that rivet out, get the right kind of rivet, and fix it, but I don't want to. I kind of like that it has that imperfection. It's like, see how much you've learned. Like, you know what to do to make that not happen again. It's kind of a little reminder. Like, somebody
Yeah,
looks and goes, "This is a really nice restoration," and all I see is that bulging outside, but I'm perfectly okay with it. Like, I guess that's a sign of maturity where, like, I can have a wabi sabi Tonka truck on my shelf.
Yeah, but it's your, it's your Tonka truck. It's not anyone else's. There's no one else
Right.
no one else's truck looks like that because you fixed it. It may not be
Hmm.
perfect in your eyes, but to everyone else, it's a Tonka truck and they know exactly what it is. But you've added your sort of, your perceived imperfection. It probably isn't an imperfection. It's just how you see it. But that
Sure.
makes it 100% yours, and you'll always be able to spot it as your toy forevermore.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a minute and thank the people that support the show financially. And those people include Big Al Schultz from New York Woodworks, Scott Oram from Dad It Yourself DIY, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, Nick Birchtold from Birchtold Design Build, Tori Decker of Tori Did It, Jake Drews of Make with Jake, Megan Chris from Onyx Designs Woodwork, Christian Neary from Warren Works, Ken Madden of Mad K Studios, David Wood of DW Wood Builds, Dean Duplantis, Chris Raley of Route 9 Signs, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, Kim and Garrett from Kim and Garrett Make It, Rory Langefeld of RLL Woodworks and DIY, Robert J. Keller, Brian Arsenault, the Seven Hills Maker, Dave Bauer from Dave Bauer Art, Donald LeBlanc of Fun with Woodworking, Ross Cave, Jeremy Spees, Grant Alexander from the Clamp Podcast, Brad Harrison of Brad's Customs, and Billy Polton of Polton Projects. Thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. You know how much it means to me that you do so. It literally means the world, and it's what keeps this show going, and I appreciate it tremendously. If you can't support the show financially, by all means, leave a review, share the show, tell other people about it. You never know who might end up showing up on the show because they heard about it through your recommendation, and that's a big deal to me. Also, in case you haven't been following me on Instagram, we now have a Discord channel for the show, and the link will be in the show notes. I'd love to have you over there to chat with us. I give little peeks about who's going to be on the show. We talk about, we could do show feedback there, and there's all kinds of chats about making and random discussion with a bunch of cool people. And I'd love to have you over there. So check out the show notes. You can find the link to the Discord channel in there. Dave, it has been an absolute pleasure, honor, everything, every word, every synonym for that, to finally get to speak with you. Like I said, I've been watching your channel. You were one of the first YouTube channels I subscribed to, and you actually subscribing to my channel was my biggest YouTube OMG moment. So it was awesome. It's been absolutely awesome talking to you. It's been awesome learning more about you. I love that we know a little bit more about the man behind the hands, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So for the people that haven't heard of you or aren't already following you, where can people find your stuff, and where can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Well, first up, thanks for having me on. It's been great to chat with you as well. You could just find me on YouTube, search for Toy Polloi, and my channel will come up. I don't think there's anyone else with a channel name like that. So just search for me there. You will find my channel. And I've been doing this a long time, so I've covered pretty, no, I'm not going to say every toy, but I've done an awful lot of toys. So if you've got a toy that's broken, chances are I've done a video that will sort of cover how to fix it. So yeah, find me on YouTube. But if you want to follow me everywhere, I'm on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok for some strange reason. I'm pretty much everywhere. But yeah, just find me, follow me, and hopefully you'll enjoy what I do.
I think everyone's going to enjoy what you do. I think, the people that watch this show and listen to the show are all makers, creatives in some sort or another. And even if you're not directly repairing toys, watching Dave do what he does, you're going to learn a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. So even if toys aren't necessarily your thing, as someone who fixes and repairs stuff, it's worth watching. Like, just even that, I love it for the nostalgia and the fixing and making, but you'll get something out of it either way. And you definitely should be following Dave. That's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, for listening, for however you consume the show. I really appreciate it. Obviously, we will be back again next week. I have guests for the next 2 weeks figured out. So we will have guests. It won't just be a me show, which I'm sure you all love. And until then, have a great week, everybody. And I will talk to you then.